What's going on, guys? We're going to go over the best controller settings for FC25. A lot of things have changed this year. EA have added new features and have also changed your default settings. So if your settings are different from last year, you're wondering why is my defending not working, why is my switching not working, it's because EA might have changed it. So your preset should be on competitive, especially if you're playing rivals, foot champions, and so on. Competitive is the main game modes, and they force you to use competitive. So this should be on by default. Now, shot assistance. Now, precision is being used a lot more. I would say it's more of a higher level thing. Yes, it gives you the ability to use your left analog stick to aim exactly where you want the ball to go, but you could also miss a lot. I would suggest going into the arena and trying it out. If you're asking me honestly, unless you're like a Division 1 elite player, I would say get confident inside the box, have composure, and then go to precision shooting. That's the way that I would recommend it. But assisted is more than fine this year. You can use that. But precision, I would say for elite level plus for now. Time shooting is off by default. Turn this on because this gives you an advantage. You can press the shoot button once and then press it again to green time a shot, and that will give you, I suppose you can say, better accuracy and better shot power. So this will increase your chances in front of goal if you do use time shooting. Make sure you check out my video on the time shooting tutorial, but make sure you leave this on. Now, through pass distance, there's no assisted as since last year. There's only semi. So when you use your through ball with the triangle button, you have to aim that manually. So remember, your left analog stick, wherever you aim your left analog stick, that's where the ball is going to go, okay? That's very, very important you remember that. Lob through pass, again, is semi. It's the same thing here. Now, ground pass. Now, this is where people are getting confused. Passing on assisted, basically, is what you should keep it on. But when it's on semi, where you move your left analog stick is where the ball is going to go. If you put it on, for example, assisted, which is what everyone uses, fine, but the game auto locks. So, for example, let's say there's player A and let's say player 1, player number 2. If you aim your left analog stick between the two players, the game doesn't know who to switch to and it passes to the closest player. Remember, it's always important to understand how ground pass distance works. If you haven't checked that out, check my video on the Patreon series. That will change your passing completely, but it should be on assisted. But if you are good enough to aim your left analog stick and you're wondering, hey, no, why I'm aiming this way? Why is the pass not going that way? Then you can change it to semi, but I'd recommend assisted for most people, especially if you're used to it. Cross can be assisted or semi. If you cross the ball, it's better to use semi. I'll explain to you why. With assisted, if you're running down the byline and you cross the ball in, the game basically effectively chooses where the ball is going to go. Normally it's to your player, but the benefit is if it's on semi, you can determine how far the ball goes. So when I press the square button, if I tap the square button, let's say, the ball will go near post. If I hold it for a bit longer, it will go to the middle of the goal. If I hold it a bit longer, it will go to the far post. So depending on how long you hold the square button, the power button, is how far the crosser goes. That will fix your issues if your crosses are not going to the back post. But since I don't like crossing too much, I leave this on assisted, especially because I use driven crosses and I like the AI assistance. Lob pass assistance, I leave this on assisted. There's no real need. If you ever want to do a manual lob pass, you can always do a precision lob pass. Pass receiver lock should be on late. Now, effectively, what this does is, let's say, for example, you're about to kick a ball, okay? Let's say it's your player A, and let's say you've got the ball with player B, right? Now, let's say, for example, you're about to pass the ball to player A, but player C, your opponent, intercepts the passing lane. Now, with late, as long as you haven't kicked the ball physically, as in the game hasn't kicked it, you can then use your left analog stick to change direction quickly. So let's say you're aiming that way, someone closed the lane out, you can then change it. That's why late is better. With animation startup, as soon as you choose the direction you're aiming in, the animation starts, that's it, you're locked. You can't change it. And it's the same with, for example, power up. As soon as you load the power bar, you aim your left analog stick, wherever you're aiming, that's where the ball's going to go. So you'd always want to do it to keep it on late, even if you have delay, because sometimes if someone is intercepting a passing lane and you're going to pass to that player, you can, as long as you haven't kicked the ball, you can change it with your left analog stick. Very, very important. Some people have this on early because they think it helps them, but they've changed it now, the wording. So definitely use on late, in my opinion. Precision pass sensitivity, this is for those that just use precision passing. Leave it on normal, it's fine. If you do use precision passing quite a lot and you're good at aiming yourself manually, which is probably like 1% of you guys, you can use high. Now, defending. Auto clearances, I personally leave it on directional because that way I can clear the ball at least the direction I want to hit it in my opinion. Now, this is the main one, advanced defending. For some reason, they keep forcing you to keep this on. If you're struggling with defending, this is the main thing that's costing you. Now, remember I said to you last year, you don't need to use advanced defending. Half the pros still use tactical defending. There's nothing wrong with it. But what I would say is, people always misunderstood what I said. Advanced defending gives you a benefit if you know how to use it. So I would say when you're on the elite level and you understand when to tackle, that's the key, then you get advantage by using a shoulder challenge at the right place at the right time or a normal tackle. With tactical, the game actually helps you. And to be honest, I still use tactical defending. So if you're struggling with defending, lead with some tactical. I have this analogy, right? Let's say you're struggling to drive a car. Let's say, for example, you learn to drive the car for the first time, and let's say you're driving an automatic car, right? Can you imagine if your instructor said to you, why don't you learn a manual car when you're already struggling on automatic? So what I'm trying to say is, keep what you know already, keep it on tactical, and then once you're comfortable with defending, then change to advanced defending. But the good thing is the tactical defensive AI, the game is smart. They know when to use the tackle button, when to use shoulder to shoulder, but EA force you to use it by default. So double check that setting is not on. I think 99% of the player base still use tactical defending, so don't worry about that. Pass block assistance, you leave this on. There's no reason why you want this on off. This will basically allow your players to intercept the passes naturally when it's close by. Auto switch, now this is a big one as well. A lot of people, for example, they put on automatic because they think, oh, that's the game helping me. But you don't want that. Why? Because let's say, for example, you're back four. Most goals are conceded. Check out my defending videos, by the way. Most goals are conceded because someone brings their back four out of position. So if your opponent has the ball, sometimes you might want to run back with your CDM. If this is on automatic, the game might sometimes switch to a random play in your back line that you don't want to. It's better to have control yourself. But with air balls and loose balls, which is the best one in my opinion, the game only switches when the ball is 6 feet or higher in the air. So when there's a cross coming in, the game will switch for you automatically. But when you're playing, the game doesn't switch for you. So if you find that your L1 switching is not working or the game switching to the wrong players and you don't want it to, air balls and loose balls will fix that. Do not put that in automatic. Now, auto move switch assistance. Now, I would say don't use high. This is the one where, you know, when the game switches for you automatically and sometimes you try to run one way, but the game's making you go another way. It's because of this. Now, I would recommend for low, for especially new players of the game, don't use high. It doesn't help you. Use low because that way the game kind of helps you a bit to orient yourself. So when it auto switches for you, it will keep running in that direction and then you can decide to run back. So let's say, for example, in a hypothetical case, let's say your opponent plays a through ball in behind and your defender is running this way. At least it runs a little bit that way for a second and then you have time to recover. If you're Division 3 and above, I would recommend none. Low is what most people use, but I would say especially someone like myself who wants full manual control, like when a through ball comes in behind, sometimes I want to run not towards the ball, I want to run to where the ball is going to be to defend the situation, just like you would in real life. So that's why I leave it on none. It gives me more control, I would say, in those situations when those auto switch happens. Maybe not the best explanation, but hope that helped. I got a video on that as well. Right stick switching. So player rotation, don't use it because you have to, let's say you want to pass to, let's say, player number 1. You'll have to go, for example, flick once to player number 3, then to player number 1, then press the L1 button to lock it in, and then you'll switch players. It takes too long. Adaptive basically is effective. The longer you hold your right analog stick, the further you can switch to a player. There used to be an issue that used to cause lag. I believe they fixed it, but I think Classic is the best one, to be honest. This one just, the way the line gets drawn, it just takes too long to switch to a person that's far away. So leave this on Classic. Now, player relative or ball relative. Now, this is completely up to you now. This is one that I always say ball relative. The reason why is I've used player relative my entire life. I would never have changed after 20 years. It's only because it's my job to test the game out. Now with ball relative, what it does, it takes the ball as a reference point. So the reason why I use ball relative is because your eyes are always tracking the ball. So if you want to switch to a player, you just flick it to the direction of the ball. So your player's at the top right, you flick to the top right. And most of the time, you want to select a player near to the ball. With player relative, how it works is with right stick switching, where whichever player is selected, that's the player you will switch to. So you have the red mark above your head. Let's say you got players 2, 3, 4. If you want to switch to player number 3, you'll have to flick it, for example, in this case, to the top left. But what can happen sometimes if there's another player in a way, like player number 1, sometimes it might go to player number 3 by mistake. So that is why I like ball relative. It's more consistent. Am I saying you should change to it? No. If you're new to the game, I would strongly recommend ball relative. Honestly, it's more consistent statistically, and it's been proven. I've already proved that already. The only benefit player relative does on a high level is you can press at a very, very advanced level, but this is like top tier pro level. I would say use what you're used to normally. If you struggle with right stick switching and you always want to select a player closer to the ball and you don't want the game switch to a player that's behind or sometimes the wrong player gets selected, then switch to ball relative. But this is more personal preference, but I would strongly advise you, if you are struggling, to use ball relative, especially if you're new to the game. That's a nil, guys. Top tip. A lot of people have changed it. I've known this because I've tested it as well. A lot of people have changed and they liked it. Now, right stick switching sensitivity. Again, people say, oh, you have to use 7, you have to use 3. It's personal preference. Now, what I like to think is, the more high you go, the more manual is. So if you, let's say, for example, there is 2 players, right? And let's say you flick your right analog stick at the player exactly, then you can maybe use 10. But let's say sometimes you flick in between them, the game doesn't sometimes know because you're not as precise. So the lower you go, let's say, for example, you go to, for example, 1, the more the game will assist you. You don't really want that, but it will assist you in the wrong way. It will kind of make a decision for you. With 10, it's a more manual. Now, what I recommend with this one, this is the way that I do it. Put it to 4, because also it depends on connection, stuff like that. So you might have a good connection, but you might play at your friend's house. It could be different. Put it at 4 default, and then incrementally change it one by one until you find what works for you. It's not what it's like in your car. Everyone might have the same car, or whatever, but everyone has a different seat position. See what you're comfortable with. Your legs might be longer. You might want a different seat being further back. See what you're comfortable with, then change it. Don't just follow just because someone is saying, oh, you have to do this number. That is not the case. Next, player switching. Now, there's actually a use case for all of them. I think goal side is one that I probably wouldn't use, because this favors the player on the goal side of the ball, and you might want to press to a player. And this is with the L1 switching, by the way. I think classic and closest to the ball is very, very good. I still prefer classic, and that's what I'd recommend. But closest to the board does have some benefits, and maybe in the future I might change it, but for now I like the way classic is with player switching. Do you want to get better at FC25? Now, before you skip ahead, what if I told you if you join my FC school and you didn't get better after 1 month, I'll refund your money? I can say this because I've been running my FC school for many, many years, and thousands of students join and even stay on. We go over complete in-depth gameplay tutorials showing you both the theory of something and the gameplay examples using real-life examples in a structured format that's like a course. The videos are on a systematic learning system, teaching you everything from the core mechanics, the basics, to the meta, so you can get better as a whole, with explanations that go beyond the scope of my YouTube channel. FC School has already started with every single tactical layout, focuses, meta cards, and learn the meta before it even becomes the meta. So come join thousands of others in a mature audience community for those looking to get better at FC25. Patreon.com/nilguides, or click the link down below. Now, when you join, we already have a library of hundreds of videos, more than my YouTube channel, in fact, with new videos on FC25 getting constantly added, so you'll never run out of content. The biggest mistake people do is they spend thousands of dollars on FP points every year, thinking this will make them better, but it won't. But now it's time for you to make that change. Don't forget, if you don't get better after 1 month, just send me a message and I'll refund your money. That's the Nil Guides guarantee. Links down below in the description, patreon.com/nilguides. Now, this is a new one this year, the reaction time modifier. Now, I'm going to read this out to you. When using the next player switch option, this modifier will take into account the delay in reaction time between the moment you decide to switch players and when you actually press the L1 button. This reduces instances where you decide to switch players, but by the time you press the L1 button, the next player switch indicator has changed. So let's say, for example, there's a player here and the next switch indicator is above that player. I'm trying to explain this as simple as I can. Sometimes it might switch to the other player too quickly, so you can reduce that delay. Now, to be honest, this one, I leave this one off for now. I will make a video in a month's time. This is a new feature. The game just came out. Even though I played the game early and I've got the game early, I'm not at the point where I can fully advise 100% on this. I still got to do more testing. So for now, I'm going to keep this one off. But you can leave it on 6 and experiment. I've tried 10 and 1, and I don't really see that much of a difference if you're asking me in terms of the time difference. But I'm still experimenting. So for now, I recommend it on off. But if you really want to adjust that, you can. Player lock, I want to add this in. If your player lock is on, but it's not working, you might be thinking, what on earth is going on? So look at this. I'm pressing L3, R3, and it's not actually working. The way you want to fix this is you want to go to settings, then you want to end up going to customize controls, and what you want to do is go create a new config. So it's like this. So let's say once you've done it, save this as a new one, overwrite in it. Then when you go into the game, it now works. So make sure you create a new slot if you're having problems with the player lock. And as you can see, look, it fixes the goalkeeper movement issue as well. You should be keeping on. That's that best feature. Use that player lock feature so you can create those unique movements off the ball. Unless you press the L3 and R, this is made for the classic old school players who press in the L3 and R3 button, you should have this on. If you activate this by mistake too much, you can always turn it off, but you should always, that's a good advice, having it on. Contest dribbling you can't turn on anymore because that was a feature with competitive master switch. It has to be off, and that's only in kickoff you can adjust that. Now, save assistance, you can leave this on assisted. That's fine. This is only for user-controlled goalkeepers, like if you play pro clubs or whatever. Analog sprint. Now, this is the most important one. Okay, this one, analog sprint. What it is, basically, the R2 button. Think of it like a gas pedal on your car. Okay. Now, this only works if your R2 button is sprint. If you're an old school ISS player and you use R1 for sprint, it doesn't work because it can only be 0 or 1 or one off or on, basically. But with the R2 button, think of it like a gas pedal on your car. It doesn't increase your sprint speed or your top speed. But what it does, for example, let's say, for example, you're running, you can, for example, decide, okay, you know what, I want to run at only 50% of my acceleration. This is good for like left analog stick dribbling if you want to, but now where they've introduced a new R1 dribbling, to be honest, I think that's like a halfway between jogging and running. So you don't really need this as much, and even pro players don't use it as that much. One thing I would say is, one thing I've noticed from coaching and everything, a lot of people have this on, but when they're defending, they don't depress the R2 button all the way when using the run and jockey, and sometimes they don't run at their full speed. So if you ever find that your defender should be running faster, sometimes they're changing speed, but you're not realizing why, it's because you're inadvertently not pressing this down, depressing it all the way. So I'll definitely recommend leaving this on off, only if you know how to use it. Trigger effects, I leave this on off. I don't want a resistance. Sometimes it's really hard to press the R2, L2 button. It's only for PS5 controllers, this setting here. And user vibration feedback, I leave on off. If you want to get feedback when you hit the post, that's completely up to you. But that is basically all the controller settings. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more detail about what the controller settings do, you can come check out my Patreon series, patreon.com/NilGuys. We've started our FC School series already. And if you don't get better after 1 month, we'll refund your money. That's a Nil Guys. That's how sure we are you'll improve after 1 month. We'll refund your money if you don't get better. And guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to see more content, more tutorials like this on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.